Hi, and welcome to the 2 minute warning. We know we're a little bit late. We had some technical difficulties, but we're glad we're here. I'm your host, Perry Busby. The 2 minute warning is brought to you by the Westside Gazette. And the publisher of the Westside Gazette is my friend and brother, Mr. Bobby Henry, and the co-host of the 2 minute warning. Welcome, Bobby. How you doing, my brother?
What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? What's happening? You know, Perry, you mentioned the fact that we had some technical difficulties. We try our best to include young people, younger than us, in everything that we do. And so tonight, our regular producer, moderator, if you will, is away. So we have a sit-in. A stand-in, and the stand-in is a young man whom I know quite well. It's my son, so he is getting the feel of what happens when we do these shows. So we're gonna bring him up to snuff, if you will, up to par. So we here, we ready to do it. Yeah.
Good. No, we're glad to be here, and we're glad to. It's always sink or swim, so we're gonna let him jump in, and see what he made of.
Okay, good. It's
Go ahead.
It's appropriate that it's appropriate that he should come in now, because we are celebrating 50 years of being in the media business. So he's getting indoctrinated. He writes for us. He covers the Dolphins. So we're just trying to make it a well-rounded team. It's a family affair, and our family extends beyond the newspaper. We have family. Period. You're a family. That biblical question that is asked: well, who is the neighbor?
Right.
When the brother was on the road to Damascus, and got all beat up, who is the neighbor? So anyway, make a long story short, we're all in this together. We got 50 years in the making. February the 15th will be the date. So we're moving, and we're thankful that we're able to do this.
Yes, and
I'm just appreciative.
Yeah, no, and I am so humbled and honored to be so close to celebrate this 50th year, and to learn just about the roots of how the Westside Gazette started, and it's been a history lesson for me, and really just a labor of love to come in and be a part of this. And as you say, I call you brother, not just in a generic sense, but we're brothers, and so we fight together, we cry together, and
absolutely.
And so we have a show tonight that makes all of us cry, because it's a family show, and when you're dealing with a painful situation in the family, it doesn't have to be you, but everybody in the family hurts. And our community is hurting right now, because we've had another young man to lose his life while in the hands of law enforcement. And so when I first heard about this story, I called you, and the Westside Gazette has helped to lead the way in this, and so I'm just happy to be a part of this.
Perry. I know it's every mission of people who serve in whatever capacity is to actually be their brother's keeper. It's not the lot of one, is the lot of us all. So when we're called to do something, if we can, by any means that we have, we should lend it. Lend it to the point of wanting to get the best for the situation. All sometimes it's difficult, it's rough. We don't always see eye to eye on things, but if given the opportunity for us to have a conversation, everybody in concern to have that conversation and understand that no, it might not always go the way we want it to go, but at least we're willing to lend ear and lend hand and put it out there for others who may be experiencing some of the similar circumstances and perhaps have some answers for them, a roadmap to be followed. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, right, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and our communities find itself at a crucial point,
Mm-hmm.
uh, coming out of this pandemic, and so we're finding out a lot about what we thought was the support, and how strong that support was. We're starting to find out that that support has in some ways deteriorated, and in some ways it's not there at all. I mean, we're finding COVID is, revealing some of the hurtful parts of our community, while we're continuing to deal with some of the older issues as well. And so that why I think that's why it's important for the black press. Uh, People ask me all the time, well, what do they talk about in the black newspaper? I said the news.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about the
Mm-hmm.
news from a black
Mm-hmm.
perspective, and so now in this age of fake news and alternative viewpoints, we need a source that we can count on, and the black press is even more necessary now than I think
Mm-hmm.
at any other point in our history.
Yeah, absolutely. Ever since 1827, when the first black newspaper was founded, we were pleading our own cause. So we continue to do that. And it's not just one entity, it is a body of entities to make one force. We speak with different voices, we have different functions, just like the body. The hands do one thing, the feet another, the eye another. But when we all come together collectively, we're able to move something. Now, those who ask, well, what does the black press do? There was a time in history where black folk weren't even recognized because there was no record of their births, of their accomplishments, or any other things that would make one be human, if you will. So we are in constant mode of doing that and bringing the news from a perspective that we understand, and we're able to do it like nobody else can. Who else can do it?
Right,
When God bless
right.
her soul, when Mary Wilson passed, from the Supremes, when she passed the other day, the NNPA was the first news source that broke that news, because of the connection, because of the relationships. And it's stuff like that that makes the black press viable. And when things like this that happened to Mr. Desir, Kevin, and his, it's stuff to bring us together. We have to work through it. Yeah, we're mediators, we're voices, and we are family. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, uh, there's a lot to this case, and it's really early on. And, like most cases, mainstream media uh, is in a rush always to paint the victim, especially if the victim uh, is African American, to begin to uh, paint the picture of the person who can't speak, and so it's always left up to the family. But in this case, we want to give the family a chance to begin, and we want to know Kevin. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and so let's begin to bring on his attorneys, those who are representing him. You want to bring them on, Bobby? Or
Well, I yield to you. I mean, I'll come in because
okay,
getting to know somebody, and
yeah.
I'm again, when you meet people where they are and you
Hmm.
understand, you're ready to do some work together. So you can.
Right.
introduce him, and I'll come on in.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
Mhm.
I was first introduced to this through a young man who I have really grown to admire his work and his advocacy. First around Amendment 4, but then I found out he's done so much uh, regarding our returning citizens. And I want to welcome Mr. Mark Mitchell of Chainless Change. Uh, hey, Mark, how you doing, man? You on mute. Let's
Okay.
get you off of mute.
You think I'd have that thing figured out by now?
How you doing, man?
I'm well. How are you all this evening?
Just
Yeah,
great, just great.
terrific and getting
Um,
better. Mhm.
yeah, Mark has been really instrumental in me understanding uh, not just Amendment 4, uh, but really understanding the trials that it goes through, especially for our African American men who have come out of the prison system and who are trying to do right, and why it's so easy for recidivism and even suicide. uh Mark has seen it all, and very young man, very wise man, but uh when you talk to other people who and you say Mark Mitchell, uh it's really a test of his character, because I've talked to people all around Broward County, and everyone says he is truly one of the young, gifted leaders of Broward. And so, not trying to put you on the spot, Mark, but just wanted to say that because I've talked about you quite a bit to Bobby.
I
Mhm.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. You know,
Yeah. Next is the attorney for Kevin Desir's family, and that's Mr. Jeremy McLemont. Did I say it right?
McClymont, can you hear me?
Yeah, McClymont. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I was having some technical difficulties. I just fixed it before y'all let me in. Thank God.
Yeah, yeah. And Jeremy, why don't you introduce Kevin's brother, Kevin Desir's brother?
If he's in, Kevin Desir's brother, one of his brothers. Go ahead.
yeah,
Is that you, Bobby?
you want to yeah, Jeremy. You want to bring life on? Then you introduce Kevin's brother.
Okay.
You want to bring? Yeah, let's
Okay,
get
I
let's
didn't
get
know
life
life
in
was
here.
on. Yeah.
Yeah, we got a whole
Yeah,
party in here.
yeah. Hey, okay. This brother, and that's what I was saying, Perry, about getting to know somebody.
Mm-hmm.
The next brother that we're about to introduce, this brother. Now, most of you guys know me. I mean, those who are out there listening, you know me. You know what type of person I am. You know, so when you put iron against iron, sparks fly. I never met this brother before in my life, but we had a conversation one night. You know, and the brother, trust me, y'all. This brother is an iron sharpener. Not only is he an iron sharpener, he is a rifle, for justice for black people. I'll say black people in particular, but people in general, because he has been hurt and overcome that. So and gangster, I ain't gonna blow you up too big, because you can tell your own story. I'm just glad to know that there's another soldier out there who's willing to go on the battlefront and fight. So, without saying anything else, I want to introduce the audience to Brother Life Malcolm. Life is his title is he's the director of the Black People's Advancement and Defense Organization and an American Working Class Community Organization. What's happening, brother?
What's going on, brothers? Let me jump right in and correct that. Let me sharpen that iron right quick. That's an African working class organization.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We understand quite well that we're African trapped in this thing that we call America here. So yeah, no, we struggle hard for the African working class. Yeah. So I just wanted to sharpen that up. But thank you so much, brothers, for having me on the program. I'm looking forward to an exciting discussion.
Okay.
Great. Well, I think one of the best places to start, because our audience is not only from Broward, so want to introduce the audience to this case and to Kevin. When exactly did this arrest happen, and what led up to where we are now?
So,
Jeremy?
before we get in, are we adding Mike into the conversation? I feel like it's only right.
Okay, yeah, I forgot. Okay, this is Kevin's brother, Michael Desir. How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well under the circumstances. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Yeah.
All right.
Good evening.
And first of all, our heartfelt condolences to you and your family. I can't even begin to imagine. And so, but that's what we're here to do, to help support. And I know part of that support is really just helping to get this story out. So can we begin with how we got to this?
Yeah. So on January 13th, my brother was arrested. He was pulled over. They said he was tailgating, following too close. And as he was pulled over, they found marijuana in the car and eventually arrested my brother. Now, at that point, we didn't even know he had been arrested until a few days later. And, you know, with everything going on with COVID, by the time we tried to reach out to figure out, you know, how can we do the online visitation, find out what's going on, why was he even arrested? It was the weekend. We were having trouble getting through. So the plan was, we actually had a meeting Sunday evening, my brothers and I. So Kevin was one of five brothers. It's five of us. Mm-hmm. And the four of us had a phone conversation, trying to figure out a plan to figure out what's going on, kind of alleviate some of the stress from mom. Because at that time, you know, we had all found out that he was arrested, and that's all we knew at that point. And prior to that, actually about 5-6 weeks prior to that, we had just lost our father. So, you know, it was just a lot going on. So that day we decided, we had a call that we were going to find out. But the next morning, before we could even get into that, we had received the call that he had been rushed to the hospital, from the Broward Sheriff's Office. So
hold on. So within 24 to 48 hours,
I would say
the time frame.
He was arrested sometime Wednesday. He was rushed to the hospital Sunday night. So about 4 days in their custody.
Yeah, so the 13th. He was arrested on the 13th, and the 17th is when this happened.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah. So he's rushed to the hospital on the 17th, or did the altercation happen on the 17th?
Both. The altercation happened, they say, around 10, and by like 10:30, I believe he was rushed to the hospital.
Okay. Yeah. No. I just wanted to hear. I wanted to get the clarification about that. Yeah. So please continue.
Yeah. So at that point, you know, we had heard he was rushed to the hospital, and then by the time we were able to see him that evening, because of the hospital rules and visitation because of COVID, my brother was pretty much in a situation where it looked like he wasn't going to make it. He was on life support from the start, and ultimately for about 10 days, until we had to make a decision, because they said he was heading towards a vegetative state. So we had to decide to whether we were going to continue him on life support, but he would have to put a trach through his tube and basically just live as a vegetable, or take him off the life support. And after that, it was only about 2 hours that my brother survived before he ultimately passed.
Okay. And Jeremy, when did you begin to take this case on?
So I can't remember the exact date, but it was a few days after I was contacted by a law school classmate of mine who is a family but in law to Kevin. And so I was contacted. I was asked if I could take on the case, and of course, I wanted to see what I could do to help. So I met with the family a few days afterwards, after this all happened, and we met at Kevin's cousin's house. And after we met at the cousin's house, we discussed some more about what I could do or what thought I could do with the case. And we met up again at Kevin's mother's house. And after we met up at Kevin's mother's house, we had a good understanding that I'd be taking the case. And after that, we met up one more time, a third time, to actually, sign up, make the promises to each other that we would stick to our guns, we would hold people's feet to the fire, and we would make sure that Kevin got, what he deserves, and that's justice.
Yeah. I know right now that, while the case is going on, that there's not much that you can talk about in terms of particulars. But
so what we can't talk about is the video, and we don't have the video yet, but we can talk about the case, what's been going on in the case, what BSO has done to try to prevent us from getting the video, that sort of thing. That we can talk about that. What we can't talk about is the video itself, but we haven't even gotten the video to even see what's on it. So there's nothing right now that would limit us or our conversation.
Right. Yeah. So the video is really how this got involved. And so, yeah, how did the video come about? Or the discussion, should I say?
So if I understand correctly, like, how did the video, explain that a little bit more. How did the video do what?
Well, I mean, immediately after he passed, Michael, did you guys ask for the video, or how did the discussion of the video become an issue in this case right away? If that
either I can answer it, or you want Mike?
Go ahead, Jeremy. Yeah.
So in jails, there's video recordings inside the jail, outside the jail. It's a facility that is going to have cameras naturally. So as an attorney, it's just, even as a regular citizen, you should know that, and you should know if something happened, you got to have your version of the story, backed up by evidence. And so the first or the best piece of evidence is going to be a video. And so that's what we, sent Chapter 119, which is a public records request, to the Broward Sheriff's Office. We immediately sent them a public records request for the video, and among the video was a bunch of other things that we sent a public records request for. But the video was the most important thing, and so we knew that the video existed because, or at least we knew that there was video in the area where he was at. We still don't know if it shows exactly everything that happened. Sometimes guards, even inmates, know in jail where you can stand in the jail so that you're not in camera shot of these videos or whatever. So we're gonna get the video. We don't know what's on the video, but we know it exists. Obviously, that's why we went to court for it.
It has been in the news of late. The question surrounding this video, so much so that from the Mr. Pryor's office, Sheriff Tony's office, Mr. Weeks' office have all been engaged in conversation about this video, and it's creating some conversation in the community where we are wondering, where are we now with this? What is happening now? What should we be doing as a community? How do we hold each other accountable? Where are we?
Let's circle around.
So, I jump in and say that one of the major things that people can do is call, and first let's put names on what's happening. Harold Pryor has been pushing hard for us to get the video. It seems that he really wants to see justice for Kevin. But this guy, Gregory, the sheriff, this boot-licking sheriff, who has the power to turn the video over. I mean, he has the power in his hands. He can do it at the snap of a finger. The Chapter 119 statute, which he hides behind right now, also gives him the authority to release the tape. And so people should do everything they can to put pressure on the sheriff to release the tape. And I mean, call the office if you got his house number. Call his house and say, release the tape, release the tape, release the tape. Agitate, agitate, agitate. I mean, we've done what we could do in the court. The family's done what they could do in the media. But this guy is telling people in the media, this guy named Tony is telling people in the media that he's somehow handcuffed by this video. And if he releases the video, it's going to somehow jeopardize security, but it's just not true. Two reasons why it's not true. Like I said, the statute allows him to release the video. Number two, people are released from the jail all the time, and they know exactly what's going on. So just like they don't mind zap them and take away their memory, and they can say what's going on inside, and that doesn't jeopardize security. Neither would this video. So I say we should get every number we can to BSO, every number we can to Sheriff Gregory Tony. If we have the capacity to stand up in front of the sheriff's office, to stand out in front of the sheriff's house, we should agitate until he releases that tape.
Brother Life, if I could, I want people to hear what you're saying. For some reason, we're getting some feedback on your volume. So yeah, it's. I mean, am I the only one that's finding it hard to hear?
Yeah, I was getting some reverb.
Well, I think it might.
It was like static.
I think it might be when other folk aren't speaking, to just have it on mute to prevent any feedback. One.
Okay.
Yep. And
so I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mom.
No. If you want to revisit what Life was saying, that's fine.
So what you're saying?
So let me know if I sound any better right now. Can I get a head nod or no? Okay. So listen, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and go out, and I'm gonna come back in. Maybe I need to use a different device. All right, gentlemen.
Okay. That sounds good. If I can add though a little bit, I think that there was a lot of I know that there was a lot of conversation the other day about security potentially being compromised if the video was released, and about in the same breath, a lot of statements about not having anything to hide. And only wanting to maintain the security of the facility. But I believe that if we're spending 4 or 5 hours in a hearing, in addition to weeks of planning and lots of the local communities' resources to defend a video that the public has made clear that they want to have released because of people need to be held accountable, and there just needs to be transparency from governmental institutions overall, then I think it's telling that there's something on that video that might give a bit of a clue to what happened with Kevin Desir. Secondly, I know that it's also important to acknowledge that Kevin Desir's death isn't an isolated issue. So we're here, Torrance, and we need justice for Kevin. The reason that the tape is really important is because there's been a string of those incidents. Sheriff Tony tends to find no wrongdoing, and we don't want that to happen. After an investigation is conducted by their internal folk, that there is no wrongdoing and there ends up being no accountability for Kevin's death. And so I believe that it's critical for the attorneys in the family, and the sheriff office is the one rogue institution in our county who no real entity has authority over besides the governor, and was no mishandling, that there was no misconduct, that there was no wrongdoing, is to simply release that you said that you don't have to hide, which is those tapes. And so I think that there needs to be a community outcry about Kevin's life, but also about the fact that there's so little transparency about what happens inside of those institutions to people in general. And they should never be able to get away with telling a family that you can't see and find out the details of what happened to your loved one while they were in our custody.
You know, we just had one of the viewers stated that there must be something in that video that they don't want the public or the family to see. I think her name was Miss Sanders. Now we have seen cases where videos were not released until years later, you know, and which had created havoc. So let me ask this question: have you, the group, the attorneys, the family, Mark, have you guys met with the sheriff to see if this could be resolved? I'll ask you, Jeremy. You're unmute.
You got to unmute, Jeremy.
All right, I'm good now. Yeah, so we haven't met with the sheriff personally. Honestly, I haven't even reached out to try to meet with him. Based off of his letters to Gordon Weeks and Harold Pryor, I think that would be a waste of my time and the family's time to reach out to Sheriff Gregory Tony so he could, you know, maybe send me a nasty letter or tell me to my face that, you know, to go kick rocks. So I haven't even bothered to waste my time to speak to Sheriff Gregory Tony about, you know, getting access to the video. He's made it clear that he's not turning the video over. He's said in the media that he told Gordon Weeks that that Gordon Weeks knows that Sheriff Tony cannot release the video. And cannot is a very strong word. It means that you're bound. You cannot, you're not allowed to, but that's not accurate. You know, he's hiding behind exemptions. He doesn't have to hide behind those exemptions in the public records statute. He can freely give up that video.
Right.
So he's
I reached out to Sheriff Tony.
Yeah.
And reaching out to Sheriff Tony, we got a cookie cutter response of filing a chapter 119 public records request. And then we tried to pursue other avenues, but he is the classic non-responsive politician. And so he ignores everything pertaining to the concerns of the community, and in the same breath is all over media saving manatees and acting as if Kevin's life does not matter. But yeah,
okay, brother, Life,
we did reach out, and we didn't get anything other.
Guys, I'm getting
no.
Hold up, brother, Life. Hold up for 1 second. Bipolar, are you? Can you adjust this tone? We're getting.
Yeah, I missed a lot of what Mark was saying.
Mm-hmm.
I heard what Mark was saying.
Mark, are you away from your mic?
Why?
Okay. This conversation is too important for us not to be able to hear. You know, Mark,
I did.
Can you come closer to your mic?
Oh.
I mean, I'm
okay.
My mic now. That, but now I guess go get a machine too.
Hold tight. Okay. Life, you sound. We can hear you when we hear you. You sound good, but there's a break that comes. We can hear you perfectly, but there's a break that comes. I don't know what's causing that. Mm.
There's a iPad thing and
Still can't hear you. Am I clearer now, though?
We lost.
Yes.
Yeah, Mark, you clear.
Okay. And if I can go back to what I was saying while life kind of comes back in, is that we did reach out. Our organization, Shameless Change, did reach out to Sheriff Tony's office and asked for the videos. And the response that we received was really a copy and paste response that's sent out to people who's asking for public records. But we have that because we wanted to have a trail of reaching out and asking. We understand that you have to start by following that process. But we tend to get those types of responses when it comes to things pertaining to the health, safety, and well-being of our communities. When it comes to the sheriff's office, they're not concerned about the lives of people who they are responsible for, and have demonstrated that over and over and over again. And so I think that it goes well beyond just being able to address or to call him out in the media, that there needs to be more transparency across the board with the way that these systems operate, so that they don't have the ability to tell people like Mike and his mother no when the life of their loved one is lost. Secondly, there's been a lot of discussion about the citizen review panel and having that implemented. And I will just add that if that was done and people actually followed what they said, there would potentially be a process that could be followed that would allow people like Mike and his family to have justice, or at least have a little more information regarding what's happening inside of those institutions, and when people come into contact with law enforcement and Broward County in general. So I think that there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I just probably went all around you, but the answer to the question that you initially posed was yes, we did ask. No, they did not respond with what was requested.
Yeah. No, and I think that raises, because we know that the BSO has been under a lot of heat regarding their COVID-19 guidelines, or the lack of following COVID-19 guidelines. But yeah, this definitely sounds like a policy issue in terms of how do we, what are the protocols for situations like this when you do have someone who dies under these conditions. But I was reading, the sheriff says that the exemption is for an internal investigation to see what happened, as well as another investigation to determine if protocols were followed. Is in terms of those investigations, I mean,
has anybody been told? Okay.
Now you break it up, Mr. Henry.
I'm sorry, Pierre. I didn't mean to step on you. But okay, can you hear me now? I'm breaking up now.
Wow. I can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Has anybody been told what happened?
There's been variations. Yeah, there have been. Well, we don't know what's on the video yet, but there have been different variations of the story. Mike got a version of the story, and then the media got another version. So Mike could speak to what he was told by BSO.
Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Mike.
Okay, so basically the version of the story that I received was, I was given a call by one of the homicide detectives who had spoken to the internal affairs unit who was beginning their investigation, which was actually the Monday night after my brother was admitted late that Sunday night. So about 24 hours later, almost 24 hours later. And basically what he told me was, there was an incident, my brother was in the cell. He was, blurting out some things that didn't make sense. They said he was able to find a sharp object in the cell. He began to cut himself. And from there, he was smearing blood all over the cell. So they went in there trying to restrain him. And then after a few officers were trying to restrain him, they said, he tried to bite one of the officers. He was trying to fight off one or two other officers. And then, they tried to pepper spray him, and that didn't work. And then eventually they dry stun tased him. And once they did that, he dropped one of the officer he was trying to bite, and they noticed he began to calm down. And then they sat him in a restraint chair. And then they said, next thing you know, they noticed he went unconscious. But even when they told me that story, a lot of it didn't make sense, because, one of the first questions I asked the officer, I said, well, how long was it that he went the time frame from when they tased him to when he became unresponsive? And the first thing the officer said, well, everything was happening so fast. And I said, officer, I didn't ask you that. I just asked you what was the time frame. And he said, well, about a minute to two. I said, okay, so if that's the case, then the taser is what did the initial damage. But them telling us my brother had cardiac failure, and then we finding out he had a noxic brain injury. And for those who are not familiar with what a noxic brain injury is, what that means is when your brain goes at least 4 minutes without oxygen, you then go into a state where your brain can be severely damaged, or you can even become brain dead. And the first doctor I spoke to at the hospital said if he had to estimate, he thinks my brother went about 10 to 15 minutes without oxygen. So if you're telling me a gentleman at 43 years old who has never had any heart issues, had cardiac arrest, and then you tell me next, he ends up in a noxic brain injury, there's a big gap that's missing in that story. First of all, how did he go into cardiac arrest? And then why did it take so long for him to receive oxygen? Those are the questions that we're trying to find out that we haven't got answers yet. And that's part of the reason, to go back to your earlier question, why the video is so vital, because we're hoping that video is going to be able to show us that. And we have a strong feeling that that's the reason why they're taking so long to give us the video, because they know we're going to be able to see some things on that video that's going to kind of fill in the gaps in the story that they're not filling in because it doesn't make sense. A couple other things that doesn't make sense. My brother has been dealing with mental health for about 21, 22 years. And my brother was very productive. He's a great father of two young, beautiful ladies. He's a full-time in work. He works full-time. He also is a business owner. So he's been through different stages of life, and we've been with him through the ups and downs of it. We just lost our father, and all of us were close with our father, but my brother had a special relationship with my dad as well. Me and my brother Kevin actually were the last two to be with my father before he was transported to the hospital for the last time we would ever see him at the house. And we were also the last two to see him the morning in the hospital before he passed. Now, everybody can understand how difficult that could be to lose your father like that, especially having a tight relationship. But it affects everybody in different ways. My brother, being that he's dealt with bipolar disorder, for those who don't know what that is, it's a chemical imbalance that kind of makes you up and down. Sometimes you can be very high, sometimes you can be very low, sometimes depressed. Dad dies, obviously he's kind of in that state. So we've seen the ups and downs. One thing my brother has never been is a harm to himself and a harm to others. So when you tell me, first of all, you tell me he found something sharp, a sharp object in his cell, which as BSO, you're not going to even allow that. That's not even, from people we talked to who've worked or even been in that facility. They said that's not even possible, for one. Next thing, his behaviors are pretty much standard. He's not going to begin to start cutting and harming himself now. This is not the first time my brother has been through a tough time in his life. And, this is not the first time, he's had some ups and downs. So those stuff wasn't making sense. And as a family, we had a big issue with BSO. And from what we heard, this is a common thing they do is they try to paint the person, the victim, as a monster first. And then shed this light as if they came in there trying to do their best job. And then ultimately something else happens. Well, we know that's not the case, because that's why we immediately begin to search for Jeremy's services and look for legal service and try to figure it out, because we know our brother. Y'all saw my brother for 4 days, and y'all assumed because he was in the mental and physical health facility that, like some other people didn't care. He didn't have that backing, where that wasn't the case. Like we said, we by the time we got a hold to figure out where he was, we were already on the horns trying to figure out, okay, tomorrow, Monday morning, let's go figure out X, Y, Z and do that, because that's how we are. We've never given up on Kev. He's never given up on us. So it just wasn't making sense. Things weren't adding up. And they thought, just like a lot of times, they were just going to be able to sweep it under the rug and push us away. And then, things would just go on, and it's business as usual for them, which is exactly how they're acting. And we won't allow that to happen.
Oh. Okay, Mike, let me ask you, one of the viewers asked, did anyone actually see a written report of the situation other than what was told verbally? By my reason for asking is a verbal report is sometimes is different from a written report.
Absolutely. And to answer your question, Ms. Sanders, Jeremy, that's one of the things Jeremy spoke about earlier, and us requesting the records and everything. And they're basically trying to hold everything they can as of right now. So we have tried that. Like we said, I got a version from the detective, and then they put a version in the newspaper that they had one of their representatives speak and say. But if you guys go back and read that article, you'll notice certain things that were left out from what I was told. There was no mention of pepper spray. There was no mention of tasering. All they did was he was cutting himself. He was doing this. They just put those things in there, but never mentioned anything else. So yes, we have tried to get that, and we're waiting for that.
Yeah. Is there a coroner's report?
What now?
And if so, is there a coroner's report? I mean,
medical examiner?
Yeah, from the medical examiner. I mean,
you're on mute, Jeremy.
Yes.
Sorry, I want to add to what Mike was saying first before I get to the medical examination. So there was a story written by the Broward Sheriff Office spokesperson, what Mike just talked about, what was released first to the Sun Sentinel, that Kevin he cut himself, he was put in a chair, and then he went unresponsive. No mention of the taser, no mention of the pepper spray. Then there was a version of the story that Mike gave just now, or what the officer told him, or what a homicide detective told Mike. What we've gotten from public records, the little that we have gotten medical documents from the medical provider in the jail, WellPath. Their medical staff wrote the version of the story from their standpoint. 2 days after the incident, they went back in and did a late entry 2 days after. So on the 19th, this happened on the 17th. On the 19th, they went back in and wrote a late entry. The late entry, not verbatim, not word for word, but basically it says that they were called to Kevin's cell because he cut himself. They were called there to help him. When they got to the cell, the officers sent them away. The correction officers sent them away, medical staff. When they came back to the cell, Kevin was out of the cell. He was in the restraint chair and he was unresponsive. That's their version of the story. 2 days later, their version in their documents, in their medical documentation, says that they didn't see anything, basically. They were told to leave. They came back and the damage had been done. What it doesn't mention is where Kevin cut himself, how much he was bleeding. It doesn't mention anything about what object he cut himself with. What is this object that he cut? How does someone in the infirmary get a sharp object to cut themselves? It doesn't mention what that object is. There are no photos of this object, at least not yet. We haven't gotten anything. There's nothing been produced yet as far as that goes. And so there's several things missing in the medical report, in the reports in general. But your next question was, go ahead, Mike.
Real quick, let me add something to that, Jeremy. also, when they said he was cutting himself, the second day I had one of the nurses working there show me his entire body, and nothing of it looks like somebody who cuts themselves. And also, if somebody had cut themselves and they were immediately rushed to the hospital, wouldn't they have bandages and blood all over them and stuff like that? None of that happened when he was transported to the hospital.
Because they did say he was smearing blood in the cell,
let me
right?
understand what you just said.
Correct. I'm sorry, sir. Say that again.
Okay, I'm sorry. You said that the nurse let you see your brother, and there were no wounds that would validate what they were saying about him being cut, him cutting himself.
Yes, sir. I had the nurse show me my brother's entire body from front to back. She showed me. She rolled him over, and she says, "None of it looks like somebody." I asked her. I said, "Does this look like anybody who's cut themselves?" She said, "No." And a couple of the nurses and doctors from the first couple of days said, "None of this is adding up." They said the trauma in his brain and looking in his body, it's not adding up. And there were no cuts on him.
This is in a written report.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again? You're breaking up, sir.
Okay. No.
I think you said, is it in a written report?
In a written report.
Yeah. Well, I imagine they would have to put that in their report when we go back and get there from each report from when he was there. That would be in my brother's medical records. See, at the time when we grabbed his medical records, it wasn't up to date because obviously he was still a patient in there. But all this information is supposed to be in there because they're supposed to say, how he came in, what they observed, what was going on. All that has to be in the medical records when it's all said and done.
Yeah, that's why I asked about the medical examiners.
Let me ask you a question. One of the viewers is asking. Yeah, one of the viewers asked, "Did you take any pictures?"
I didn't take pictures of his body. I took pictures of my brother when I first got there, but I didn't take any pictures of the body.
Okay.
And let me also add, so when something like this happens in BSO custody, they're supposed to document where these people cut themselves at. I think we already talked about this, but they're supposed to document it. And I believe there's a diagram that they have, like a cutout diagram that you put on paper, and you can circle where the injuries were. So you circle next to their arm or their hand or whatever, and you indicate that that's where the person was cut. So this whole thing about we're trying to figure out if he was actually cut, I mean, it's gonna, at the end of the day, when the evidence comes out, when we go through discovery in this case, we're gonna find out exactly what happened. When we get the video, we're gonna find out exactly what happened. But right now we don't know if he cut himself. And what it seems to be is that he did not cut himself, based off of Mike going to the hospital looking to see if he cut him, like if there were any cuts on him. The nurse saying that there were no cuts on him. It just doesn't make sense. How does he even get a sharp object to cut himself? But to answer your question about the medical examiner, so he did get an autopsy from the Broward medical examiner, but that report hasn't come back yet. After he got a medical examination and autopsy done in Broward County, we got our own medical examiner to examine his body, to do a second autopsy, to get our own independent review of the first autopsy. That report hasn't come back yet either. It's being stalled because our medical examiner wants to see the video before he finalizes his report. All right, so initially we worked out when Broward wouldn't give us the video, and BSO wouldn't give us the video, we at least asked them if they could give it to our medical examiner so he could do his job. They agreed to allow our medical examiner, well, not even to allow our medical examiner to view the video because our medical examiner was in Tampa, Florida. Broward is 4 hours away. So what they said was that we could have a medical examiner come to them to have that medical examiner view the video and then tell our medical examiner in Tampa what happened on the video. Fast forward, minutes after the press conference, just moments after the press conference, we get an email from our medical examiner that was supposed to go and see the video that BSO rescinded the invitation for him to come and see the video. So I don't know if the viewers here are watching. This is the press conference that we did right outside of the courthouse. It lasted about 20 minutes. A rally followed by a press conference. And so right after that, BSO reneged on giving us the opportunity, giving our medical examiner the opportunity to come in, view the video, and then relay that information to the medical examiner who actually did our second autopsy. So we're still waiting on the results.
Okay. And Life, I wanted to go back to you because we're talking about the issue, but this started from, if I'm not mistaken, Michael, you said a tailgating. He got stopped for tailgating?
He got stopped for tailgating, correct.
But he got arrested for what?
For marijuana. And my brother also has a marijuana medicinal card, and I don't even know if the officer asked him if he had a chance to I don't even know, because like I said, by the time we found out, the damage was done. So, but yeah, he pretty much arrested for marijuana.
Which is legal in most of our country.
Right. And so he hadn't gone to see a judge, or where was he in the process? Had he been arraigned or what?
So from my understanding, I believe Thursday he was supposed to see the judge, but something happened. I don't know if I don't know the full story of that yet, but he didn't make it for some reason. So yeah, I guess he went into the weekend and that's what happened.
So he was there all the time and no bond set. So he's there for 4 days and no bond.
So let me legally let me explain how that works when you get arrested and how bond works, right? So Kevin had a previous case that was open before he got arrested on January 13th. On the 6th, I believe it was the 6th. Mike, correct me if I'm wrong. But on the 6th of January, he was arrested for, I think, criminal mischief. He bonded out on that criminal mischief, and he was out on bond. So on the 13th, when he picks up a new case, a judge can legally hold someone no bond if they've got no bond on the first case that they were out on bond for. A judge can legally hold you no bond if they've got probable cause that you committed a new offense. So when he goes to court the next morning, and I don't know if he made it to court or not. I believe he didn't make it to court. If not the day Thursday, then Friday he would have made it. So sometimes if there are medical issues, they don't make it to court the next day, or they'll make it the following day. At some point, he did go to court, and the judge revoked his bond in the first case. So he had a bond for the marijuana possession, but because he picked up the marijuana possession charge, it revoked his bond on the first case. And so he was being held no bond on the first case. And what that means is that you can bond out on your marijuana case, you can pay the bondsman, but you're still going to be held on the first case. You're not getting out unless you file a motion with the court and get the judge to agree to or to make the decision that you should be eligible for a bond.
I think that points out the fact that he was even incarcerated, though, points out the policies in the system for a low-level marijuana charge and for a criminal mischief charge, which is low level, and especially considering that he was a gentleman who had a history of mental health conditions that BSO and corrections facilities aren't even trained to treat. He should never have been in contact or housed inside of those facilities. He didn't need to be in custody. And I think that just speaks about the need to have alternatives to ensure that things like this don't happen for people like Kevin.
Yeah. Was he taking any medication at the time?
At which time?
For his depression? At the time during this time, I mean, for his, you said he had depression.
He typically takes medication for his bipolar disorder. But while he was in their custody, I have no clue if they were giving him medication. And matter of fact, when I found out all this happened, I was wondering, like, man, I wonder if they knew, if they were able to, get him to get some medical attention so he can get his medication and this. But then later I found out he was actually already transferred to the facility where they supposedly catered to that. Mm-hmm. And this happened in that facility where you're supposed to be taking care of mental and physical ill patients.
Yeah, It's going to be documented. He was in Broward North Jail. That's specifically for people who have physical ailments and mental health conditions, which also means that if there was a situation where he was attempting to harm himself, as they stated, then there should have been someone trained to address that. There was no reason for the medical professionals to have been rejected in the first place, unless there was, in fact, something to hide.
Right.
You know, it's important to also say that, as we mentioned a bit ago, Kevin had just been arrested a few days prior, just a short time prior. So BSO, during that intake process, became aware, if they had not been before, of the fact that Kevin did have, this mental illness. And so they should have, as Mark just pointed out, treated him with a different level of care, it seems. But, back to this conversation about marijuana, it's sinister that the state of Florida would, on the one hand, authorize Kevin to possess marijuana, and then, on the other hand, lock him up for having it, and then end up doing this awful thing to him. And more than that, Perry, you asked if Kevin was taking medication. I'll tell you this: I know people who have medical marijuana cards, right? And many of them have medical marijuana cards to treat things like depression and bipolar, etc. So what we do know is the sheriffs, the state of Florida gave him the card so he can have marijuana, and then the Broward County Sheriff's Office took the marijuana from him, and he very well may have needed that and could have used that to help him get through what he was going through.
Exactly.
So it's just a sinister thing, just on the individual level for Kevin, but on a larger scale, the fact that the state of Florida generates billions of dollars on medical marijuana, and then on the other hand locks up Africans like Kevin and ends up killing them just because they had some weed is definitely unforgivable and unjustifiable. So we are so glad. I know I'm glad that the Desir family is so strong and so outspoken in this instance, because it helps many of us see this contradiction that I just highlighted. Because it could have easily been swept under the rug, as we see. The BSO's sheriff is trying everything they can to hide the information. I heard that in the press conference, I heard the family say that Sheriff Tony ran on some kind of a campaign of transparency, and in this instance, he's been any and everything but that. And so
this instance,
if it was not for the Desir family, what would have happened in this instance? Nobody would know this story. And it's important that we highlight those contradictions, man.
No,
Life. You am I breaking up? Life. You speak from a position of being there on another side. The fact that you had a personal tragedy in your life, so you understand and you feel what is happening.
Absolutely.
Can you just share a little bit of light on that and how this marries to each other?
Yeah, so when Kevin's case came into our office, and especially after Mike sent the pictures that he just spoke about a bit ago, it reminded me of my own son. My son, Life Lazarus Coleman, was shot and killed in my front yard on January 5th, 2015, just 6 years ago. And so I know what it's like to see someone you love on life support and have to make this decision to turn the machine off and watch him die. And so, and I know the kind of strength it takes, whether it's bandits with badges, like in Kevin's case, or bandits without badges. Bandits did this awful thing to our family. And I know what it's like to have to stand in the media to fight this kind of battle against these bandits who will continue to do this stuff to us if we don't speak up and say something and do something about it. So that's why I have the utmost respect and esteem for the Desir family in this instance, because I know what it takes to do it, the kind of fortitude it takes.
Thank
you. We got another viewer that says, from Justin Coffey. Justin asked the question: how can you ensure that the footage you eventually receive is not redacted? What accountability measures can we assist in as a community?
I think that goes back to the issue of transparency, but Jeremy's the attorney here. Oh, so we're gonna let him talk about it, but it speaks to the transparency of this system, right? And why we need to advocate for more transparency and accountability. You're silent, my brother.
Since the hearing on Tuesday, myself, my co-counsel Greg Lauer, and the other attorneys on the other side have been going back and forth about the language of the order, because we're tasked with writing the order to give to the judge, and then he'll go through and make additions or subtractions or whatever modifications to that order and then put out a final order. But we're tasked with the first draft of it. So we've been going back and forth about the video and about what needs to be turned over in the video. And so we made it clear that we want the video from the very beginning until the very end in that proposed order, right? So that everyone is weary or afraid that BSO may do some sort of redactions or change or alter the video to give us something that isn't authentic. I can look at a video. Science is good, but it's not that good. I can look at a video and see whether it's been altered. If you throw a punch at somebody, it's got to connect or it's got to fall short. If you're walking towards someone, you can't just stop walking and glitch backwards. So unless someone is that good with a video as they are with a photo in Photoshop, I don't see them getting past us with redacting a video and making those types of edits. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, there's no way Kevin can go from well to almost dead, and they hide that. So yeah, they're gonna to answer the second part of that question, what can the community do? The community can show this sheriff that one Tony don't stop no show, and get the telephone number to the sheriff's department, the telephone number to the sheriff's house, the telephone number to the sheriff's church, and say, demand release the tape, release the tape, release the tape. You understand? And so that's the rallying cry that we need from this community right now. The Desir family has enough to do. They're doing enough work right now. Right now, the community needs to step up and do, take on some of this weight. And it's just as simple as I know somebody know his phone number. Get the number and just call his house and just say, release the tape, hang up and call right back. If you got two phones, use both of them. Call the sheriff's office, the sheriff's house, the sheriff's church, and everywhere you can, and demand he release the tape. One Tony don't stop no show.
But I think it's also important, again, to just remember and speak and be present when this is happening in our community, because if he's willing to continue to not be transparent and forthcoming with information when harm is caused in the community, is that someone that we really want to represent Broward County? Is that someone that we really can trust to lead and consider our best interest? And so I think, getting involved in the fight short term and advocating for the tapes and advocating for accountability and for the people involved to be disciplined, but also being involved in this fight long term so that we can transform our community so that there aren't more Desir families who are standing in this situation is critical as well.
Yeah. And for our audience who aren't here in Broward, I do want to make one particular thing significant. You've heard us, especially live, talk about Sheriff Tony. In this instance, in Kevin Desir's case, all of the actors are African American men, from the sheriff to the state attorney to the public defender to every advocate and the family. This is an unusual case.
Hey Perry, let me jump in right there, and the judge too. The judge who was who's on the case for the tape, brilliant, working hard for the family and for the tape, So yeah, we don't want to forget that brother, because he put the gavel down for the family, Yeah, so.
Yeah. So when you look at that,
I'm not.
Go ahead, Bob.
No, go Perry. I'll wait.
Yeah.
Okay.
No,
I'm not sure, but 99.9% of the deputies in the jails are black. So there's a 99.9% that everybody involved in this case is black. So we have to do our due diligence, and it's going to call for us from both sides collectively to make sure that justice is done. No matter how much work we have to do, how much pulling back of skinning the onion, if you will, we're going to have to do it. And that's the way it is.
And we have to remember that just because people look like us, that don't make them for us. That doesn't. Just because he looks like he looks. Go ahead. Yeah. I'm sorry. You cut me in delayed.
You're right. Mark, you're absolutely right. One of the texts that I received is from a person that works inside of the jail, and what he says is that he wished he could see the tape too. Because there are things that happen that we are not told about. We don't know. Because we haven't gotten a report. We don't know what happened during that restraint when they put the brother in the chair. We don't know. How did he get an object to cut himself in a mental health institution? How did that happen? So all of these things, all of this plays a part in what it is to be black in America. I know y'all think I'm doing this from a far stretch, but I'm telling you, it plays a part. So
well, also explore what was done to prevent to prevent from having to restrain him in the first place or having to respond that way. What was done to prevent from even getting to that situation? Because there's policies in place and there's the consent decree in place that's supposed to be used to prevent these things from happening in the first place.
Right. How did he get in the infirmary in the first place? I mean, again, I'm going back from the very beginning. I'm going from tailgating. And if you in Broward, hell, everybody tailgating this damn city, and so how does that even raise the bar to even get someone's attention? But again, how we get from a tailgate to jail to an infirmary?
To soon to death.
Yeah, to death. I mean, I don't understand. And I've been to jail. I ain't been in the infirmary. What led to this? I mean, there are some missing pieces.
Correct. And real quick, if I could just say something. So
another
Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm sorry. So I just want to add this in real quick while we're on the subject, talking about law enforcement, all this. So a couple of months ago, one of my good friends actually owns a clothing line, and he came out with a shirt, and I was like, man, I really want one. So he sent me one, and I'm wearing it. I don't know if you guys can read it, but it says, "Dear law enforcement, we need our sons. Sincerely, Kings." And the irony that our family would be in this situation today, to me, is just mind-boggling. So it's kind of going back to what Mark said. Like, we're not just about getting justice for Kevin, our brother. Obviously, Kevin's gone. Kevin's good now. Kevin's in a better place. He doesn't have to deal with the foolishness on this side. But we don't want it to be another Desir family, like Mark said. We don't want this to keep happening, and it's almost like we're used to it. Like it happens, like just another one. Like this can't happen anymore. It has to stop.
And especially in that facility, I mean, there was Tammy Jackson who had to give birth alone in there. There was Samantha Bertois who had to give birth alone. The gentleman who had mental illness that they put in isolation and had harm on himself. Several people also died. They tried to claim that it was suicide. And again, in all those cases, there was no wrongdoing, according to the sheriff's office. That cannot be the case with Kevin.
Correct. And Mark, let me add some. Our other attorney, Jeremy's co-counsel, Greg, he alone since 2011 has represented 9 death cases in that one facility since 2011. Let that sink in. And he only does 2 cases max per year.
So, to piggyback on what Mike just said, and Mark too,
we don't want it to be another Kevin Desir family, but to everybody watching and everybody listening, let me say this to you. I guarantee you there will be another Desir family if you don't do something about it. You have to organize yourselves right now around this situation, around this family, around this issue in order to make it stop. It ain't just gonna stop. As Mark just pointed out, as Mike just pointed out, it's a trend. This is BSO brutality as usual. This is what they do. This is their MO. This is their habit. They can't wait to catch you and do this thing to you unless you stop it. They're not gonna do it by themselves. So it's critical that you don't wait until it happens to your family before you decide that you got to activate and do something. Do something now before you have to bury your child.
Yeah, that North Broward jail is more like a North Broward cemetery. Something happens there at least once a quarter. Somebody gets hurt, somebody dies at least once a quarter. But we also have to consider, what about the stories that aren't getting out? What about the stories that aren't ending up in the media? There are so many people who are being harmed there, and there is nobody who's being held accountable.
Right.
You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking down this whole time. It's because I'm actually going over the order right now, like as we speak, because we got to turn it in. And so I'm looking at the order on my phone and like going through things that I don't like and changing and whatnot. But I do want to speak to this issue that there will be another family. I mean, it's almost like it's rolling down the hill. You can't stop it, and we got to do something to stop it. I mean, I'm going down to Miami this weekend to meet with another family who may be in the same position. So I mean, it's right at my doorstep. Another family who may be in the same position, right? And I have to go meet with them this weekend. So, I don't know what exactly happened. We don't know what happened in Kevin's case either, but we know that Broward Sheriff Office killed him. And so this other person that I'm meeting with in Miami is not a Broward. They're in Miami-Dade. And it doesn't matter what jail you're at. It doesn't matter if you're in Broward or Miami or West Palm Beach, Tampa, Orlando. The jails are the same all across this country.
It's the prison industrial complex that needs to be uprooted and dismantled. I was another viewer in county and somebody got beat to death 10 years ago. It's still happening.
Yeah.
One of the viewers asked the question: has anyone considered this to be? This is Mr. Combs. Has anyone considered this to be at the federal level of a civil rights violation?
It is at the federal level of a civil rights violation, and there needs to be a complaint filed with the Department of Justice.
But one hasn't been filed as of yet, right?
Not yet. No, we've been dealing with the more pressing issues of getting the tape, so we can have a better understanding of what actually happened to Kevin for those purposes. But we have time to file that civil litigation, and I believe that the way the Desir family's been fighting, they're gonna make sure that happens. So I mean, Mike can speak to that, but maybe if they don't, we'll bring it in instead, because something's got to be done. And it is a civil rights violation. Certainly a violation of due process. There's no way. Like Mark said, there are policies in place. I read one of the consent decrees, and it said that the restraint chair is the last thing that they should do. They should try to exhaust all other measures, and when all other measures prove to be useless, then they do the restraint chair. But it doesn't seem from the report that they did anything other than pepper spray, taser, and restraint chair. And so there's definitely a lot of issues in the case that raise some serious civil rights issues.
Well, the consent decree also says that a mental health provider was supposed to be present before this happened. They didn't follow that. They're not following any of the processes in place. What they're doing is beating and killing people once a quarter.
And somebody might say, well, what could they do? There are things they could do, like they have this shield that they can kind of walk into the cell with, and press the person in their custody up against the wall and try to control. They have these mechanisms that they can put in place. It's just an example. So it didn't have to just go, it seems, to pepper spray and taser. And I think Perry, you said he was in a restraint chair. How do you get out the restraint chair? Why did they have to take him out the restraint chair? And because they said when they came back in the room, the nurses, the medical staff said when they came back in the room, he was in a supine position and unresponsive. So he was in the chair and in restraint chair, restrained in the chair, but somehow now out the chair and on the ground in bad shape. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff in there that we got to deal with.
What are some of the next steps?
I know.
Go ahead, Bobby. No, because that question can wait. Bobby, you had a question?
Okay. No. I was trying to share this onus. The sheriff is the head guy, but those deputies in that on the ground, the ones on the ground who see the Kevins every day, that look like them, that have decided to, and I'm speaking from a humanistic standpoint. Those jailers who have been, overseers and taking on the mentality of the overseer, as opposed to a correctional officer or a deputy, they become the point of contact. So whatever behavior is exhibited, be it one of out of control, whatever behavior is exhibited, it then becomes on that deputy to deal with that situation from a human standpoint. If those deputies don't look at another inmate as a human being, then you're right, we're going to have a lot more of this. And there is nothing that any lieutenant, colonel, sheriff can do if that front line defense chooses to act erratically.
Well, I think it comes from the top down, though, Mr. Bobby. I think it comes from the top down, and it's all about addressing the culture of the institution and ensuring that the policies are enforced, and that you hire people who care and people who are actually trained to do these things, do these jobs in a way that doesn't continue to harm and hurt and kill people. It comes from the top down. You have to have a good leader in order to uproot that from the institution.
I'm not discounting that, Mark. What I'm saying is there are cases of sabotage. I'm not discounting what you're saying, but I do know that on that front line of defense, if you ever been incarcerated, you don't deal with the sheriff. You deal with that situation there. So when it begins to roll over, now, we gotta go. Sheriff, you gotta come down and deal with this now. You have to deal with. You cannot run from this. You cannot cover your deplorable workers up. You can't continue to condone what they're doing.
But the reason that I'm saying that it's a top down. Sorry. The reason that I'm saying, though, that it's a top-down thing is, again, because it's happened over again, at least once a quarter, and there was chance to take corrective action and do something to ensure that those people who offended did not continue to repeat offending, and also to establish examples. That hasn't been done. The example that has been set was that it's acceptable to kill people, it's acceptable to harm people, and it's okay to hide and not investigate and say that no misconduct is found. The example, the precedent has already been established. So that means that there needs to be somebody else that comes in and decides to do something different.
Well, one thing that we know for sure, from a historic perspective, the state does not have the ability to criticize itself, let alone correct itself. And so this thing that you said a little bit ago, Mr. Henry, about all these black people who work in the jail, they have relatives. people, the video isn't the only source of information for us. The reality is there are people who know those people who did those awful things that Kevin know exactly who they are and have the responsibility to expose them. That's what the people have the power. We have to save and defend and protect our own selves, our own lives. And so there are people we should put pressure on. They go to the church, they go to the grocery store, they go to the park, they get their haircuts. Somebody knows who those people are and should put pressure on them, should make them feel ashamed and embarrassed, and give them a little more political education than that, so that they do the right thing by this family and all the families of other people who died in BSO's custody. So it's the people. The people have the power.
And that jail is right in Kevin's hometown. It's in Pompano.
And Bobby, you spoke to that issue when you talked about the jailers themselves, and we all know that the jailers are. I want to be kind in this, but they are not our most professional when it comes to careers. And I know even in the most sacred careers, whether you're dealing with a psychiatrist or someone else, they tell you that you need to get personal attention yourselves. And so you see these jailers who are just as much a victim because they've grown up in violence, they are in violence, and no one is there to help them cope with a situation. That is a ticking time bomb. They're very much a part of that situation. And they're very much a pawn in that situation because you're putting conflict in conflict. You got a guy who's getting $16 looking down on a guy who's in jail who may have a check bigger than his. And so you've turned this upside down. And I have friends who've worked in the jails for years. And I've seen it and talked about how their mentality about everyone is wrong. I have some friends. You can't get slack with them because they're so used to seeing everybody in a cutthroat environment. And so I think one of the things our law enforcement has to do is take care of their own. If you're going to be a deputy, you've got to seek some sort of way to release that because you're holding too much. And you're in there with people who are also establishing that. So again, I think those are one of the things that we can begin. If we're talking about policies and how do we address this, it's not just addressing the issue, it's also addressing the protocols by which they are going to run these facilities.
Okay. If I could, let's do this. We went over just a little bit, but it's cool. If we could, Jeremy, Michael, Mark, and Life, if you could give us one marching order, give our listeners one marching order to what we can do to get that video released and begin the process of getting justice, or the family who's pleading for justice, to give them some hope. What would you tell us to do? One thing from everybody.
I can go first. So, from a legal standpoint, the press hasn't been the video hasn't been released to the public, and the press didn't sign on to our petition to get the video, and the judges made no decision on whether the press can get the video. The press should unite together to file their own petition, the same sort of petition we filed, and use what we did and build on that. So get together, black press, black and white press, whoever. Somebody needs to hire a legal team so they can go in and do what we did for the public. And I think that once you all see the order that we've drafted, that you'll have some good grounds to file your own petition. This is what I'm still working on here. So although we got the video, myself and my co-counsel, for the Desir for Michael, although we got it for just us and Michael, what I'm trying to do in this order, and what we're trying to do is make sure that the press has a blueprint so that they can follow and get the video for themselves and for the public.
I'll go next. So just like kind of going forward, one thing we want to emphasize from our family is we don't need anybody to help us mourn for Kevin. We'll mourn for him, but we want your support and continue to push it on social media. Every time I post something, I'm hashtagging justice for Kevin Desir. So we'll continue to get that thing spinning and keep going, and just continue to support. And not only that, things like this, when they happen, there always comes a time where like things will die down and everybody stop pushing it. We can't let that happen because, and I believe that's what BSO is fighting for, to kind of just prolong things. So at some point it'll kind of die down, but we're letting them know we're not taking our foot off the gas. And we want everybody to kind of keep that mindset and don't let it, don't be lulled to sleep by them like they normally do when things like this happen.
So if I was to go next, I would say that the journey towards justice is a lifelong battle, and we have to stay engaged. And to that point, I would encourage everybody to text change 954 to 833 954 833 3653. And that way you can continue to receive updates on how you can take small steps to small actions to continue to stay in the fight, because I don't think that one action actually would be enough to address this injustice. We need to have a long-term commitment and from the community to continue fighting and to continue amplifying Kevin's story. So again, you can text 954-833-6353 if you'd like to stay engaged and continue to receive instructions and information on things that can be taken, actions that can be taken that'll have an impact on ensuring that there's justice for Kevin, as well as other people in our community who are impacted by the criminal legal system.
I say again, get the phone number. I know the power of agitation. Get the phone number and agitate this Gregory Tony. Get all the phone numbers you can. Not only that, if you can organize and stand in front of his house, do that. If you can organize and stand in front of his church, do that. Those people who were involved with Kevin's death, expose them. Don't let them hide. Don't protect them just because they are your friend or your relative or whatever. The wrong is wrong. Expose them. Because if it's bad for the hive, it's bad for the bees. And if it's bad for the bees, it's bad for the hive. So expose them. And so the power of agitation should not be underestimated, man. We can fight the battle. And like Mark said, man, I'm sure he can get some instructions out to you. But right now, I say start tonight. Get on the phone right now. Call, text the sheriff. You want to, aggravate. Make sure he can't sleep at night. You understand? And until he gives up this tape.
But I think it's also, agitate, aggravate, and strategize. So if y'all text me, I got a whole list of things that you could do. But that's my one action.
Right. Bobby, are you okay? He look froze over there.
Yeah. No. I was trying to hear what Mark was saying. I know Mark came in and I couldn't hear him. But Mark, we're gonna continue this conversation. I really we being the black press and Jeremy, I don't take what you're saying lightly. I do understand our role, and so much so that it has been sent up to the chain, and so everybody's gonna hear about this case everywhere, and we have to do that. And though we may disagree how to get to a point, the goal is to get to that point. You know, and we definitely want justice for Kevin. We want a healing for our community, you know, and we want to be about the business of doing what it takes for us to move. I agree with you, Life. We got to agitate. We got to agitate. We have to do it until we get what we want. And until we do it collectively, we could easily be picked off. So we have to do it collectively. That means we have to have meetings before the meetings.
Mm-hmm.
There are things we have to do. And then we're able to do it. And Perry, one of the viewers said, what you talking about, man? You know how much money the deputies make behind that jail cell? They make way more than $16 an hour. And that's what one of the viewers said. So I guess, now I don't want to guess.
Yeah.
Yep, but
no, I didn't know. I was being generous. I didn't know.
We're in
right.
this together.
And Bobby, I would say
I know, but I want to be like, yeah.
Bobby, I also just want to say another thing people can do is share this story. The press is important, no doubt. But we have this technology. Like Mike said, he's making hashtags. Share the hashtag. Share this story. Share Kevin's. The firm and the family put together a video. Share the video. Spread the word about this story because the more people hear about it, like you said, Bobby, the power. There is some power in numbers. And so, that's another thing that people can do as well. Just share the story.
When we talk about sharing it, though, I'll say that on the social media platforms, I would lean towards, of course, using Justice for Kevin Desir, but also adding or tagging Sheriff Tony. We done tagged him so much that he blocked us on all platforms. So then what we started to do was use the hashtags that he used. So anytime somebody look for him, they'll see the stuff that's happening in our county. And so if you look up BSO Sheriff Tony, you'll see all the stuff he's been doing to people in our county as well. So think about strategies like that as well.
No, that's great. That's great.
Okay.
Okay. Also, in terms of cases like this, I mean, are we really sure they're keeping a good count of this? And I'm always about counting because at the end of the day, people gonna always look at the numbers, and if it's a number that's in their favor, they'll look past it. And so, I just feel like if you're not counting, then you being counted.
They aren't keeping a good count of this. But what happens, and we're fortunate for the Desir family, because what happens is oftentimes they'll give people hush money, bind them to some kind of confidentiality agreement, and the story never gets out because people need resources, and they have to make the decision that they have to make to continue because life does go on. But I'm really grateful that the Desir family has chosen to take a position of pursuing justice for their loved one and not accepting any of those agreements from the sheriff to shut up and sit quiet, or not pursue justice for Kevin.
And Mark, to add on what you said, they can keep that because that's not going to work. Not with this family.
Rightfully so.
Right on.
Right.
Okay. Well, brothers, did we miss anything? Is there anything we need to say before we close this out? Okay, we said everything.
I'd like to say to you gentlemen, thank you so much for hosting this, and thank you to everybody else here. I think conversations like this and continue in these conversations is definitely going to help in trying to make a change and pushing things forward. So I thank y'all so much for that.
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. I really appreciate, deeply and profoundly appreciate 2 Minute Warning and Brother Perry and Brother Bobby for bringing us on to have this conversation. You know, Mike, brother, as you know already, we've spoken a little bit. Anything I can do, we're here. You know that, and you know, Mark, it's been a pleasure meeting you and finally getting the opportunity to talk more with you. And so, I'm just very profoundly grateful for this experience, and yeah, I want to express those sentiments.
I share the same, but if I could leave with some parting words, it would just be to remember that despite what may come up in the media and despite how people might try to portray Kevin, and how frequently they might use a picture of him when he was incarcerated, that he was somebody's brother and he was a father and a son and a community member, and his life had value and it should have never been taken. And no matter how people try to justify the loss of life, there's no way that you can justify it and there's no way that you can rectify it. But what we can get is justice. And we want you to join us on our journey towards justice.
Mm-hmm. And if I could, I'd say something.
Cool. I'm sorry, Jerry.
Okay, yeah. So and at the press conference, I talked about how, you know, Mike and his family, they were broken. I talked about how there were families all across the nation that were broken by these sorts of situations. Just a bunch of people in this world, in this country, who are broken by poverty, broken by mental illness, broken by drug addiction, broken by the criminal justice system, by prisons, by abuse, mental and physical. And, you know, and I get this, and it comes from Brian Stevenson, who's one of my heroes. I try to figure out why I do what I do, why I take on these sorts of cases, why I do criminal defense and civil rights, which are some of the hardest areas of the law to practice in when you're so connected to your clients and whatnot. And you take this stuff home with you on a nightly basis. And I try to figure out what it is that drives me. And, you know, and I don't do it because of any money. I don't do it because, you know, I want to feel like, you know, like I'm important or whatever. I do it. And I learned this from reading Brian Stevenson's book. I do it because just like everyone that I represent, I'm broken as well. You know, from my own experiences and from living with theirs. And so it sort of is therapeutic, you know, dealing with this stuff. And for me, I don't do much else besides come to work. Like, life can attest to it. I'm at the office right now, and as soon as this thing goes off and shuts down, I'm gonna be writing an appeal until 12 o'clock tonight to submit to the second DCA and here in Florida. So for someone who has been denied a bond illegally, but you know, this is what I do day in and day out, and I just don't see myself doing anything else but fighting for Black people and fighting for Black liberation. There's just nothing else to do. And so I think that there's nothing. What else are you doing on this planet if not doing what we're doing here?
Well said.
Yeah.
First, you know, my commitment to this is really just through my commitment on relationships, and I got involved because of relationship. And last year, Bobby and we ended out the year by just committing not to what we were going to do, but committing to what we weren't going to do. And the road to victory on this is winding. But I hope that we can all gather and agree around the one simple thing, and that is we're not going to let this rest. And so anything on top of that ends up being a victory, because I know it's some hard roads ahead of this. Mm-hmm. But if we just stay committed to what we're not going to do, and so we're not going to let this rest. We're not going to let Mike and the Desir family walk on without this community. Those are some things that we can be committed to, and not promising something that we don't know exists, but we can agree to that. And I'm thankful, and I want this. I hope that you guys will come back and keep the audience abreast of what's going on, because again, they'll only stay interested if we move on. And so, if we're the front line for this, I want to make sure that we keep this line of communication open to make this happen.
I'm with it. You had that commitment from me, 100.
Me too. This is what I do all around the clock.
We're not done, brothers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We talked. Okay. Are we there? Okay. All right. So we talked about the mental capacity and the mental stability or non-stability of police officers. With the brother who committed suicide in Louisiana. So we're going to have a show with some police officers, black police officers, to discuss that. Okay, that's in the works. So that would either be, I think it's the week after next. Next week we'll have some brothers who have been pardoned from prison, 31 years and 29 years. So we're going to engage in that conversation because we need brothers, man. We need true brothers. Now, as it pertains to Kevin and his family, Langston Hughes wrote a poem, and it's called A Dream Deferred. We cannot allow Kevin to be a dream deferred. Langston asked the question. He said, what happens to a dream deferred? Does it dry up like a raisin in the sun, or fester like a sore and then run? Does it stink like rotted meat, or crust and sugar over like syrupy sweet? Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? So we cannot allow Kevin to be a dream deferred. So we have to stick to what we're doing, no matter where the sparks may fly, and stay the course. And that's my commitment to not allowing Kevin to become a dream deferred. Good night, brothers. I love you. Ain't a damn thing you can do about it. Life, you and I gonna talk some more.
Looking forward to it.
All right. Thanks, everybody. It's been a pleasure.
Yo.
Later.
Mark, I see you.
All right. I appreciate y'all. Y'all have a good one.
Yo.
Yeah.
I got you.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out how to get off here now. Okay, there you go.